Welcome to the Self-Storage Show, where I have conversations with my industry friends, talk with owners and vendors, and share tales about my management company, 3 Mile Storage. Let's go. Hi everyone, this is Jim Ross of the Self-Storage Show. Got another episode here for you. Got Ryan Smith. He's the founder of Elevation Capital Group. How's it going, Ryan?
Going great. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for, you do the short straw and you joined me on the show, so thank you. I know you're busy, so I appreciate you making the time.
You're good. You're good.
Let's just, I guess, first start off with, tell us a little about yourself and what Elevation Capital Group does, and then we'll get into it.
Sure. Yeah, happy to do it. And I'll be, for your listeners' sake, I'll be short. I've heard my one too many times in my life. But in short, we're in the self-storage and the mobile home park business. We've been doing it for a very long time. In a lot of places. So we've got a lot of big numbers to go behind what we've done, but we enjoy it. We enjoy the puzzle of it. We enjoy the people. We have a lot of great relationships built over a very long time. And we intend to do it for a long time to come. So anyway, it's, my wife and I started the company about 23 years ago. We've owned property in more than 30 states. So we've been kind of here, there, and everywhere.
Well, that's cool. I didn't realize it was a husband and wife startup company. That's amazing.
My wife and I just grabbed lunch, and her office is down the hall there.
Oh, that's cool. I don't know if I could pull that one off. So kudos to you. That's awesome. Anyway, I reached out to you and was just like, hey, I want to talk to people on that side of the thing because again, I'm a third-party management company, so I deal with marketing and operations all the time and kind of think of it, but I want to talk to more, capital investors and that kind of stuff to be able to talk more about, things changing. Obviously, It's not like it was a couple of years ago, and you made a comment about, some, investors kind of getting into it, years ago, probably made some mistakes and might kind of, bite them in the butt right now. So I figured might as well let's talk about that a little bit. That'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm happy to dive into it. Yeah, I think a lot is changing in the present, market, which I think most of us know, with, rising interest rates and rising cost of capital across the board. But I think the last couple of years, really starting in the late 2019 timeframe until 2022, there were a significant number of new investors coming to the space. And by the space, I mean, this concept of investing in private funds, private syndications, investing in private real estate, for the purpose of, I think generating some kind of income component. And I think in at least some cases, they made some mistakes. And that's me looking from the outside in. I probably don't know the full story. They probably tell you they've done it perfectly. But in short, I think a couple of things that I think might not do too well in the short run were decisions to invest, I would say based solely on the promise of income. And there's a lot of reasons why that's problematic. But first and foremost, it's the premise that you can earn yourself rich. And that's flawed. So in my mid-20s, met a gentleman who was very, very bright. At the time, I think he had been a party to 75, 80 storage facilities, had 55,000 units under management. Which, right. I mean, you would appreciate that, right? I mean, that's a lot of units. So I had a chance to meet this guy in my mid-20s. A third party, a mutual friend, offered to connect us. And he said, hey, would you like to meet him? I think at the time he was in his mid to late 50s. I was in my mid-20s. And so I didn't grow up wealthy, didn't grow up from a wealthy family, very blue collar, at least on many nights slept on air mattresses as a kid. So the point being is the opportunity to meet somebody like this, I wasn't going to pass it up. So I said, I said, if I have to, I will walk from Orlando to California to meet this guy. Fortunately, I didn't have to walk. but I had dinner. I had dinner with him, and he asked at the time. He asked me the question. He's like, "Well, what's your current goal?" And I, my wife and I's goal at the time was more income focused, as it kind of often is to start.
Yeah.
And so we had a goal of 10,000 a month of cash flow. We had achieved that. And I think the goal at the time of meeting this gentleman was like 50,000 a month and something like that. And I remember at dinner, he goes, "Well, he's like, that's fine if that's what you want." And, I took, I said, "Okay, I'll take the bait. It seems like that's not what I should want," by his response. And me valuing his feedback, I said, "Well, what would you do if you were me?" And then he goes, "Well," and by the way, this is all to kind of to speak to the goal of income purely.
Yeah.
But he commented to me. He goes, "Well," he's like, "it's impossible to earn yourself rich." He's like, "If you focus on creating wealth, you can utilize the wealth to generate all the cash flow you'll ever need, but you cannot create wealth through cash flow." He said I remember he's like, "At that point in time, the entire tax regime is set up so that will not happen, cannot happen. It'll never happen to you if you try to earn yourself rich," which is why so many people fail at earning themselves rich.
Yeah.
And so he implored me to consider and change my focus to creating wealth and for the purpose of creating cash flow. And so that's what we did. And it was, we did that, gosh, now, I mean, coming up on 20 years ago. And it was a really, it was paradigm shift, because that difference then spawns all kinds of ripples. What we do now is very different than what we did then, because that advice he gave was pretty pivotal, and changed the way we did what we did because of the change in why we did what we did. But what I see today, back to the question, is a lot of LPs are entering the space, and a lot of them are trying to get out of corporate America, and they say, "Hey, I have XYZ dollars. I want mailbox money. I want to generate passive income so that I can quit my job." And so with that frame of mind, the higher the income, to a degree, the more you can make, the better.
Sure.
You always have limited resources. So the more you can get out of those little limited resources, the better off you are. Maybe you can quit your job or go part-time or work less or some of these things.
Yeah.
And so what I think in many cases didn't realize they were doing is they were, as a general statement, they were seeking riskier assets that produced more cash flow to get them more of what they wanted. And so I think a lot of investors today are sitting in fairly risky assets, not really realizing the risks that they took when they got into them, but are starting to realize those risks now as kind of the wind is being taken out of the sails of the economy. I think that's becoming more and more apparent to more and more people.
No,
That's what I was referring to.
no, I love that story. I don't know why, as you're telling that story, I kept envisioning the Rich Dad Poor Dad book kind of a thing. Just having those conversations that just put you on a totally different path.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, pivotal.
That's amazing. So as these investors, and again, we've all seen it, everyone's kind of piling in the last few years because it's been waved in front of them, being like, "Oh, we spent mailbox money." It ain't easy. I don't care what investment it is, what you're getting into. Nothing's ever as easy as it's made out to be. And like you said, maybe right now with the kind of the change of the economy and the interest rates and things like that, yeah, it's going to be more and more apparent that maybe they did get involved in some maybe not so sound investments. What are some of those warning signs you think?
Well, I think as a general statement, I think, there's a couple of things. I think on the whole, money was cheap and prevalent and plentiful. So you could buy a property and you could borrow, 70 to 80, in some cases more than 80% of the purchase price from banks and lenders who were more than happy to lend it at very, very low rates. So today, Generally speaking, those loans are 5-year term or less. Some are variable interest rate, adjustable rate. For the adjustable rate crowd who didn't purchase rate caps, they're in a bad spot presently. For those who have a 5-year balloon on the loan, you're sitting at 80% leverage at purchase, you're going to have a problem because most lenders today aren't financing much more than 50%. So all things being equal, if your value doesn't change substantially in the asset, you're going to have to bring a lot of cash to closing to refinance, which will represent a capital call to the LPs who may or may not have it at the time, which could be problematic. So the point, I guess, back to the top is a lot of operators bought properties in secondary, tertiary locations, and then they took a lot of debt on in order to buy because they could. They can't today, but they could then. And so, I think what we'll see, and I don't know, I'll probably be wrong in this, but our general premise is you want to own quality assets well located for the long run. And when purchasing them, you want to use low leverage. So we have, the last couple of years, we have been relatively uncool because we didn't lever to the hilt like everybody else was. And we had to answer for that, why we, weren't putting ourselves to a degree in the cool crowd. I haven't had any of those questions recently. So that ship seems to have sailed, which is great. But for us, we just, we generally go in an acquisition, we're buying quality, well-located assets. We're going in at 50% leverage, and going from there. And we think we're sitting pretty good right now. But for the groups who went in and they bought lower quality assets and took on too much debt, they're gonna, it might be a little bumpy. So that's what I mean. And so generally speaking, the folks that bought the lower quality assets with exceedingly high leverage, their tool for attraction to investors considering investments was rate of return or projected rate of return, and they sure did show some pretty good numbers. But what I don't think LPs themselves considered too much is the risk they were taking and window shopping solely based on projected return, or especially cash distribution.
Yeah, those wonderful projections. I've seen a few projections in my day, looking at it going, looks great on paper.
Sure.
Make that a reality. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's hilarious. So I'm just trying to put myself in a position of maybe some of these investors that are, again, it's going to get bumpy for them. Maybe not to get too much in the weeds, but you kind of mentioned about, okay, you're going to have to be able to do something to start building the value back up for your property. It's hard sometimes because right now it just seems like so many locations they're in pricing wars. It's not like what it used to be. We could just name our price and rent the unit. So that's kind of off the table. You can't do pricing. It's hard.
No, it is. I mean, if you look at it, you've kind of got the operation side of the coin, and you have the cost of capital side of the coin. So debt costs are going up. You have equity costs going up. You have, as a general kind of speaking across all assets in the market, you have a softening of your revenue growth to your point, and you have a rising of your expenses, increasing expenses. So you have a lot of headwinds. There are a lot of headwinds. So I think today the properties that are really well moated, that are really well located, where there's not a lot of competitors, they're still able to a degree name their price. Yeah, because they're in a strong position, which has always been our acquisition criteria, is we want to buy where it's very difficult to compete with us. But not everybody, and it's not exhaustively true, meaning there are some properties where we will invariably see some level of competition. So it's not like, I don't want to treat that as if we have absolutely positioned ourselves in all ways to the point where we will always remain unscathed. But that's a high priority for us, is to buy where it would be very difficult to compete with us. And to the extent that somebody else did compete with us, it was unlikely that they would compete in a significant way. So like if a new facility opened, in the next 2 years, and then 2 years after that, another one in major metros, that really won't make too much of an impact. But if 5 or 6 of them open in any given year, that's a challenge, right? So we want to buy where the latter, the second example, is really hard and would be very hard to make happen. So as an example that's less conceptual, we bought a property about 2 years ago in Alexandria, Virginia. And current demand, I think at the study we did, is current demand, or the demand at the time of purchase, was 9 feet per person in the market, and supply was 4 feet per person. And so there were obviously very high barriers to entry. Otherwise, there would be 9 feet of supply to 9 feet of demand, or even more. And so we really like that property because it's very moated. It's very difficult to compete, and we think it'll be that way for a long time. So this is, I think, all of this to say, I think the time that we're in and moving into, I think there will be a decoupling where the performance of quality, well-located assets from an investment lens will actually do better compared to lower quality, higher levered secondary market kind of properties. So I think this is where quality will once again matter a lot more than it has over the last couple of years.
As we're talking here, it's sparking some thoughts in my own brain of, again, being part of management. I need to be more mindful of having more of these conversations about the importance, frankly, of operations and management, because that might help out some of these guys who are maybe tough in a tough situation. So, all right. Anyway, I've been that you've been talking, so it's true.
No, you're fine. I mean, and there are companies that are trying to be built to help save some of, so for example, there's a group I'm familiar with. I just met with them this week.
Yeah.
And they are entirely remote managed. It's a remote managed software kind of SaaS platform, where it's not a kiosk, because I think most people agree those aren't, at least my view is they're not that effective. And we use technology in our business, but not kiosks from a standalone standpoint. But this, the point is, this outfit, what they do is they have this technology suite where you walk into the lobby and they've got sensors. And so, they have a live person on the screen, like is kind of like a better than Zoom, but kind of a Zoom-like call, where the person on the screen says, "Hi, welcome to the store. How can I help you?" Welcomes you, engages you, sees how they can help you. And then if they want to show you, if you want to see a unit, they can actually say, "Okay, well, I'm going to text you a link." You click the link, they're now on your phone. So you're actually walking through the storage facility, and they're saying, "Okay, now turn left and turn right."
Oh, nice.
This is the locker, and then they can digitally unlock the lock for a smart lock, and then you can roll it up and say, "Okay, I really like that one." So it's an entirely live person, but remote managed solution. And the reason I mention all of this is their whole aim is to go to some of these operators that are in real trouble. And the only hope that they can to survive in some cases is to cut their expenses. And so they're trying to provide a tech-enabled platform that would, at least they can grow their business on the backs of really a lot of operators that really need the solution. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yep, it is. I'm actually talking to those guys pretty soon, so stay tuned. So I know what you're talking about. It's fun. And again, that's kind of the point where we're do these, with this show, with this platform, is having these kind of conversations. It's not about all doom and gloom. I want to obviously face reality and then talk about what's going on right now in the industry. But
yeah,
you talk it through, and there's someone else is in the same situation. So that's why we talk.
Storage business is great. It's a great business. I think anybody watching this who is considering owning one or investing in one, I wouldn't talk you out of it. But like everything, it's just the details actually matter a lot more than they have seemingly mattered in the last couple of years, where you can pretty much buy anything anyway, and it turned out in the short run to look pretty smart. those kind of environments usually crumble, and they're crumbling. They have been crumbling. The Fed pivoted on rates or changed course on rates. So anyway, but the long-term viability of the business is great. I love storage. We just bought a storage facility about 6-7 weeks ago in Vero Beach, Florida.
Nice.
We're still acquiring properties. I like the space a lot.
So with, being a capital group here, you guys taking investors? Is that
Yep. We do from time to time. We have limited room left in the Vero Beach deal, and then we're launching what will likely be called Fund 9, probably towards the end of this year. So there are times we are raising capital for new deals. There are times we're not, but we are presently.
Well, so obviously it sounds like you have a sound investment strategy. So obviously, if you're on the show, you got to be able to tell us about it, and how people want to get more information. How do they reach out to you?
Yeah, our website's elevationcapitalgroup.com. And then my email is ryan@elevationcg.com. And anybody can reach out to us or get a hold of me anytime they want.
Perfect. All right. Again, thank you so much for taking the time. We'll have to do it again, Ryan. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks. See you, bud.
All right. Take care. Bye. Before we wrap up, just a quick reminder. Do you want to level up your storage game? Visit theselfstorageshow.com. Grab some high-value freebies, check out top vendor spotlights, and stay in the loop with our newsletter. Do you want to chat about becoming a client with 3 Mile Storage Management? All the info's there. Plus, if you've got a story to share, we're listening. Everything you need is at theselfstorageshow.com.